Well, good evening. Welcome to the Barton Memorial Building. I believe that's where we are, right? This is the Orleans-Caledonia House District. There are 2 seats in this race. My name is Todd Bronto. I'm sorry I'm not as good looking as Anderson Cooper, but you're going to have to look at me tonight. Well, I don't know. I've got a little bit of white coming in, but not quite. We have 3 of the candidates with us today, and we'll go from we'll start with the 2 incumbents to your right. All the way at the end is Sam Young of Glover, Vicki Strong of Albany, and the challenger is Frank Heward. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
And Frank is from Craftsbury. Matt Eldridge is on the ballot, but he's not here tonight, so we're going to, it's just going to be the four of us up here today. What's that? No, we're all going to have the same amount of time.
Good try, though.
I will say, we're going to go over the rules right now. There is 2 minutes for each answer. However, the briefer, you can keep it, and if it can be under 2 minutes, we'll just be able to get to more questions. Each candidate is going to have 3 minutes for an introduction and 3 minutes at the end for closing comments. And like I did say, there will be 2 minutes for each answer. Martha is going to give you a 30-second warning. And that is the 30-second warning. High tech here. We couldn't tap into the Wi-Fi, so we're using Post-it notes. And then she's going to call your time when your time is up. So when you get to 1.5 minutes, you'll see the first paper, and when it's time, we'll let you finish your thought. You don't have to just abruptly stop. If audience members do have questions, you can fill out a card at the table. And you can give the card to Robin. And the table is back there. And you fill out the little card like this, and give it to Robin, and she's just going to make sure it's not a duplicate question that we already have, and make sure that I can read the handwriting, and hopefully we can get it in. Hopefully we have enough time. So I would say, how about we start with the freshman, the challenger? Does that sound fun? Sure. Okay. I'm just going to go right down the line, starting with Frank and his 3 minutes for introduction. And we do have, unfortunately, 1 microphone for you guys to share. So if you don't mind, we probably don't need them because it's a pretty small room. But just for the sake of the camera, we are taping it for Northeast Kingdom Television, which I am the director of, by the way. I forgot to tell you that in my introduction. I was so focused on saying that I wasn't as good looking as Anderson Cooper. But this will air on channel 15 with Comcast cable. So if you could hand the microphone down to Frank, and Frank, you have 3 minutes for your introduction.
Okay, thank you, Todd. I'm Frank Heward from Craftsbury, and I'm running because I have a 5-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old daughter, and I'm concerned about the future of Vermont. I want them to be able to grow up in a Vermont similar to the one that I enjoyed growing up in. And we're on a trajectory now where I'm concerned that they're not going to be able to live, work, or raise their families here. And so I believe I want to be part of the solution to some of the challenges that we face as a state. And I've reached my capacity to absorb any more taxes. And as I go around to homes in this district, I find that a lot of other people have too. And Phil Scott is going to need help building sustainable budgets in the legislature, and I think I'm that person who can help him. I want to preserve the cultures and traditions of Vermont. My family came here as farmers in 1802 from West Newbury, Massachusetts, and I think I'm pretty familiar with the cultures and traditions of Vermont, and I see them slowly slipping away in many instances, and I hope to work in the legislature to help preserve those traditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And Representative Strong.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming, taking the time out of your busy day, a beautiful day today, to share with us. This is an important election, as you all know. I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit for those of you who might not know a little bit of my background. I've been married to my husband Nate for 39 years. He's sitting right here. He's my best supporter and chauffeur and right-hand man. And together we have raised 3 children that we homeschooled. I've been a pastor's wife for over 30 years and helped Nate with other various types of jobs because we've lived on a small, modest income as a pastor. So he's been a business owner building musical instruments called dulcimers, been a carpenter, and we raised our 3 children in a small rural setting, raised animals and had a big garden. And as our kids got older and went off to college, I became a Weight Watcher leader. I lost 40 pounds through Weight Watchers about 20 years ago and embraced the healthier lifestyle of that and have continued to help other men and women throughout the Northeast Kingdom embrace healthier lives. While I struggled sitting in legislature eating a lot of candy and cookies and things like that because they like to feed us there. I also attended Sterling College many years ago, and it gave me a great foundation of hard work and really appreciating nature and the beauty and the environment we live in and wanting to protect that. And because of that, I became a strong opponent of industrial wind. So for the last 6 years that I've been in legislature, I proposed the industrial wind and put a bill out to ban any further development of wind in the state. I also attended Laterno University and got a great background there in other areas of my life, and especially what was close to my heart was missions and helping others. And so I've lived a life of service for serving people in our community and in our state. And when our son Jesse died in Iraq, it became my way of comfort and doing something good out of something hard by running for legislature and serving our state in a brand new way. I had given up on government and on the political process, and I thought there was no way I was ever going to be someone who would drive to Montpelier every day. But out of our loss and his death and sacrifice, I decided to serve, and it's been my joy to serve for 3 terms. Hope to go back for another one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Representative Young.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Young from Glover. I was raised in Glover and here in Barton. Went to Barton Academy and Lake Region Union High School. After that, went off to UVM for 2 years, studied computer science and speech and debate, and then went and attended Prescott College in Arizona for a year. I've worked as a gardener, a timber framer, a CAD designer, a carpenter, a web developer. That's what I currently do now. I have my own web development business and work for companies all over the world. I was first elected in 2010. I served 4 years on the Commerce and Economic Development Committee, and I spent the last 2 years on the Ways and Means Committee. I also spent 4 years on the board of the Vermont Telecommunications Authority, through which we were able to build a fiber optic network throughout the entire area. And I was recently heartened to hear that Craftsbury received a grant to build off of that network and to do some fiber to the home projects. And when I first ran, I was really working to expand broadband throughout the area, and actually it's nice to see that having come to mostly to fruition, and almost everybody in this district at this point does have access to some broadband. I'm also the Vermont representative on the Streamlined Sales Tax Governing Board, of which I actually have a conference later this week. And that's a group where we try and create tax uniformity between the states so that, so basically the tax laws can be applied similarly throughout the various states, and also to deal with the issue of online sales tax collection, which the state of Vermont currently, we talked a lot about our budget problems, but the state of Vermont loses $50 million annually for not being able to collect sales tax from online purchases, and it hurts our downtown businesses that don't get that revenue because people are purchasing things online in order to save themselves the sales tax. Well, I hope I didn't learn any bad habits from last night's debate, and I hope that we can be an example for maybe what the presidential race could be when people respect each other and actually talk about policy.
All right. Actually, we'll keep the microphone down there with you, Sam. We'll start down on that end. So before we start with the questions, there is apple cider and cookies over there. It's free, so please help yourself. We are going to stagger the answers, so the same person doesn't go first every time and vice versa. So we'll start back with Sam, and then the next question we'll start with Bigby, and then the next we'll start with Frank, and then I'll be confused. But I'm going to try to, I've got my notes here, so I'm going to try to make sure we start with the right person. But each question is for all three of the candidates, and I'm going to start off with kind of a continuation to your introductions. And that question is, what do you think, if you could narrow it down, to the three most pressing issues in your district?
Okay. Well, I think that the thing that I've been concerned a lot lately with is opiate abuse, and it's something that it's really started to raise its head after I graduated from high school. I've had multiple people that I knew in high school who've lost their lives through either the drug itself or sometimes the withdrawal. And that's been a top concern. And I think that in order to deal with a lot of the other issues around here, we really need to face this as a community and have public dialogue about it and get people treatment who are ready to get into treatment. One of the things that I think about a fair amount is actually the downtown Barton area and what we could do to revitalize the downtown Barton area. And I think that's a significant challenge. And the other thing that we has kind of come upon us is, I would say, Act 46 and how we're going to deal with that as legislators and how this area gets moved forward and either dealing within or without those guidelines. And I think it's a challenge that we have moving forward. And I think those, off the top of my head, I'll go with those as my top three. Thank you.
Go for it.
Oh, yeah, just go for it.
Okay. We'll probably somewhat repeat ourselves here, but I do agree with Sam about the opiate addiction and think that we need to do more for treatment, prevention, strengthening the family. And I'm hoping when we go back to legislature, we'll really address it even in a more aggressive way. And on top of that, even, I would have to say that when I'm talking with constituents throughout the Northeast Kingdom, the main concern is affordability. And that means our property taxes in general. The current administration has come up with several $100 million worth of tax increases since I've been in the legislature, and it added layers of bureaucracy through regulation, and it's squeezing all of us who have businesses, who own property, and strangling many of the young families, and people of all ages are struggling to make ends meet. So I'd like to see us become more business friendly and more affordable. And then the concerns for me are with education. Public school is struggling, but we're also seeing that independent schools and private schools now are finding that the legislature wants to add more regulation to them. So I'm concerned about the future of education. We have a lot of potential in Vermont, and we have a great system, a voucher system for the areas that don't have the grades. They can send them through school choice. So I want to see that protected and in fact expanded. So I think those are three topics that are on everybody's minds as we move into the next year.
Thank you. And Frank?
Taxes. I've been to 99.9% of the homes in 5 of the towns in my district. And everywhere I go, people are tired of paying high taxes. Property taxes, this tax, that tax, it just goes on and on and on. It just never ends everywhere I go. That's what's on people's mind. They're overtaxed, they're overburdened, they're overregulated, they want government out of their hair. They want jobs, the economy. The second one I hear the most about is no job. People are concerned about where their children are going to work. They're going to have to go out of state, likely to get an education, and then find jobs outside of the state. They're concerned they won't be able to raise their families here. Healthcare. Healthcare is on everybody's mind. A lot of people thought, well, they just get away with paying the fine if the legislature was going to implement the first year, and they'd be done with it. They just do what they were doing before, hope they didn't get sick. But now their premiums are expensive. They're worried that if somebody gets sick in their family, they're going to lose everything they've ever worked for. They're going to lose their home, and it's just a fiasco. And then they go on about all the money that the state of Vermont has spent with this Vermont Health Connect. And so those are the three biggest things. I hear about Act 46, I hear about the opiate crisis. It's not a huge problem, I don't think, in our district. It's out there, it's creeping around. It needs to be addressed up front before, we're right in the thick of it. But those are the things that I'm hearing about mostly. Economy, taxes.
Thank you. We'll start the next question with Vicki, then come down to Frank, and then back to Sam. The next question on the docket. In view of both the North Country and Orleans Central Supervisory Union's opposition to Act 46, the school district consolidation law, what do you think should be done? Do you view that law as an effective way to improve education and save money?
Well, I voted against Act 46 very vehemently, and I'm thankful that the supervisory unions are also not in favor. I did propose a bill this last year to bring more school choice throughout Vermont. We have a 150-year tradition of school choice in towns that don't have sending schools, and it's been actually a cutting-edge type of education system. The rest of the country is looking at Vermont and how our voucher system has worked, and it's done well. And so with this Act 46 is taking a step backwards. We see in Maine that they're trying to undo some of the mergers that they have done and taking steps backwards from that direction. So I feel that overall Act 46 was a step not forward but backward, and that Vermont is such a unique state with so many different types of areas, just terrain and communities, that we have to embrace our uniqueness, each town having its different types of schools. And I see so many varieties of education. And in the future as well, when we see technology opening up before us every day, we're on that cutting edge of education, exploding with new types and varieties that can go forward. So Act 46 was completely not creative. It put way too much pressure on school boards and communities and divided them. And I feel that it was not a good law, and I'm hoping that it'll be repaired or repealed when we go back.
Thank you. And to Frank. It's going to be a little confusing. I just want, I don't want everybody to be in the same order every time.
I think Act 46 was the wrong approach. I would support repealing that law. It was hastily enacted, wasn't well thought out, and will do nothing to save the taxpayers money, and certainly will not add any value to our children's education. We're really going to need to look at education, the cost of education, from a completely different perspective. Education, the public education system in Vermont is in crisis. There's no question about that. And until we start over and look at what's driving the cost, then there's not going to be any savings and there's not going to be any benefit to children. So I would support repealing Act 46. I think it's a waste of time to just play around with it, try to improve it, because we've seen what happens when the legislature spends time doing that sort of thing.
And down to Sam.
Well, I also voted against Act 46, you know, and I think that I'm gonna take a different tack. I think that our public schools are doing a really good job with what they have to deal with right now in terms of the number of children coming in with problems, and I mean they really are also like almost acting as social service agencies. You know, you implement a law and we certainly could repeal parts of it, but there's certainly communities that have gone ahead with mergers under this framework, and they, you know, were promised tax breaks. You can't exactly just go and take them away. And it's not exactly as easy, you know, this is not, it was not an issue that was really like a Republican Democratic issue. I just actually looked it up this morning. There was 21 Republicans in the House that voted for Act 46, including the Republican leader. So it's not, so the leadership of both sides was pushing this issue. And so I don't think it's something that that you're likely to be able to just go and repeal. So I think that the actual solution will be to fix it as you go along. And when the feedback comes back from the communities that it's not working, and I mean it's a pretty broad scope, and it's, you know, there's certain parts that need to be fixed.
Thank you. We'll start the next question with Frank. So far, I haven't mixed the order up yet. The next question is, are you satisfied with the process used in sitting renewable energy projects? Let me get that. Are you satisfied with the process used in sitting renewable energy projects? Why or why not? And what changes would you like to see made?
No, I'm not happy with the process at all. I think the process in Montpelier leaves a ton to be desired. I would seek partners in the legislature to try to ban industrial scale renewable energy projects. Ban them completely. It's the wrong thing to do in the state of Vermont. Like I said initially, my family's been here since 1802. Those mountains are sacred to my family. And it was a complete insult to see what happened to Sheffield, and the Lowell Mountains, and others. I would seek to ban industrial scale renewable energy.
And down to Sam. And then Vicki.
So I've been an opponent of industrial wind since I was, you know, first elected. You know, the problem, you know, is certainly in the Public Service Board, but it's in basically, but that towns have no ability to fight these, these developers. They're the ones that have all of the money, all of the lawyers, and they're really, I mean, it's really impossible to imagine that a town like Irisburg, say, is going to be able to, fight this development and raise their property taxes in order to do it. And so, first of all, I mean, I thought it was kind of poignant during the gubernatorial primary where Matt Dunn said that he thought that towns should have a say in whether a project was cited in their town, and it was like this crazy backlash, and that is just an antithesis to everything I think about Vermont is that what we're going to say that towns can't have a say. I mean, that is outrageous. Towns not only deserve a say, but they also deserve representation before the Public Service Board. And I would also, I mean, if it was within the realm of possibility that we could get to an all-out ban, that would be great. But I would take a reform in the process that gave a town a fighting chance in order to represent themselves. And that would be at least a small step towards making some headway in giving us, representation. Because it really is like a, where are all these projects going to go? They're going to go to the places that can't fight back, and that's us, and that sucks.
So this year I did propose a bill to outright ban industrial wind on any more of our ridge lines or any more land in the state of Vermont. Industrial wind is pretty much a scam, and it's outrageous what it's done to our ridge lines. Of the 7 towns I represent, every single town has been affected by industrial wind and by the siting that happened or didn't happen. So as Vermonters, we're total believers in local control and of having the abilities to decide per town how we want to move forward with energy. We live in an age when natural disaster is always a possibility and terrorist attack. And so to be unprepared for energy on more local levels, I think is really the issue. Industrial wind isn't the answer by any means. So we do need local control. We need better siting, and the legislature really did work hard at that this year. The political shenanigans that were going on behind closed doors, I can't even tell you what's going on. Bobby's back there shaking his head. He probably knows more than we do. But it's a shame, and I hope that will bring a change to Vermont. I believe Phil Scott has said that he will outright try to have an executive order to say no more industrial wind in Vermont. We need to stop and take a look at this. So I hope we will as we move forward. We've paid the price in the Northeast Kingdom for the lack of proper siting and what's happened. So as we move forward, I hope we'll have better news in the coming session.
I'd like to ask a question on that.
Sure.
I'd like to follow up on this.
So we're going to start the next question with Sam. In our order here. As a previous provider who denied wage increases to keep tuition assistance for my 2 girls to avoid a $300 increase to my child care bill, how do you plan to support livable wages for providers while keeping child care affordable for working families?
Can you read that one more time?
Sure. As a previous provider who denied wage increases to keep tuition assistance for my, I'm going to say children, to avoid a $300 increase to my child care bill, how do you plan to support livable wages for providers while keeping child care affordable for working families?
So I'm still a little unclear on the question, but what I think I'm hearing is somebody saying that they didn't take a raise so that they could keep their child care subsidy. And I think that, I mean, knowing the specifics for the individual, I don't know exactly what to tell them, but I do think that it's important, at least from like the legislative perspective, that we reduce like what we call like reducing the cliffs or creating a slope, so that there is, you know, as you make more money, you don't fall off the cliff and you know, get no subsidy for your child care. I mean, I think it's, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with people about the cost of child care, and it's no wonder that, you know, people are having less children because they can't afford them. But I think that the solution, certainly at the state level, is to make it so that it's a gradual step down in terms of your subsidy versus the amount of money that you're making, so that you're not denying, not taking, you know, raises in order to maintain your child care subsidy. And I think, without knowing the specifics, that's the best answer I can give.
Yep.
So I am also a little confused about the question, but I do think that the affordability crisis affects every area that we're living in as Vermonters, and that means childcare. Even if you want to get a job in the area, lower income jobs are here. We need more jobs and more levels of jobs to bring higher incomes. So we need to also just address in general the affordability crisis that we live in Vermont. And if we are able to put more money in each other's pockets, we're going to have the ability to pay some of these things that we struggle with. As a young mother raising my 3 children, we homeschooled and I stayed home. I gave up an education, further education and a career while we were raising them because we couldn't afford other alternatives. It was the joy of my life to do that. It was not a sacrifice as far as the love of being with my children, but it was a sacrifice financially to do that, and young families are sacrificing to raise these children. So we need to make Vermont more affordable, especially our young families that are struggling, and to open up more opportunities for childcare. By the way, as I've traveled throughout the state, I just talked with someone who's closing their childcare after 30 years of great care for kids and loves children, this woman, because she just can't do the regulations anymore. And so we're regulating our child care so much that many are closing and providing less opportunities for struggling families.
And Frank?
This is one of those issues where there's no easy solution, and I certainly don't have a specific proposal, but I want to see it at the table when these issues are discussed, because I can completely relate to the situation. I don't quite understand the question either, but I will tell you that back in 2009, I'm a concrete contractor, and I was building a house foundation a week, and the housing industry collapsed, and I was spending $780 a month for my 11-year-old daughter, who was a year and a half old then. So I can tell you that I started to run out of work, and my daughter became quite familiar with the concrete business. She went on jobs with me and probably knew more about building house foundations than the majority of the people. So I understand and can completely relate to the high cost of child care and trying to make the bills and trying to make ends meet when the money just is not coming in. So I wish, the devil is in the details. I wished I had an easy solution, but there's not one.
We'll start the next question with Representative Strong. Do you support having someone other than a hunter or trapper on the Fish and Wildlife Board in order to reflect their mission statement to include all Vermonters?
That's an interesting question. Could you read it one more time?
Sure. Do you support having someone other than a hunter or trapper on the Fish and Wildlife Board in order to reflect their mission statement to include all of Vermonters?
Okay. Well, this is a topic I'm not all that well aware of, but I do think most boards should include people of all different backgrounds and angles and perspectives. So I'm not sure if that board only has fish, trappers and hunters, etc. But I think boards of all natures, whatever it is, a nonprofit or whatever, should embrace many different aspects so they can represent the most people possible.
To Frank, sorry. And then down to Sam.
Sure, it sounds like a good idea to me. Just would be interested in finding out, who's interested in being on the board or if they have an agenda, but I don't see any downside to getting a perspective from a non-hunter or fisher person.
And Sam.
Well, I think that there are people other than hunters or trappers on the wildlife, the Fish and Wildlife Board. I think that it's good to have a variety of people on that board, but I think that hunters and fishermen actually have, a fair amount of experience in the area. I mean, I think that people, with a, kind of greater knowledge of wildlife biology and like habitat management, also very important. But I also don't think this is particularly a question for state representatives because that board is appointed by the governor. And so, while I think it's probably a good idea, I don't think it's really for us to decide.
And we'll start the next question back down here with Frank. EB5, of course, has been a big thing this year, and even though this question refers to Newport, it does affect the area in a whole. So should the state legislature have a role in Newport's economic development? And if so, what should that role be?
Sure, I think they should, and with the Vermont Economic Development Council, I'm not exactly what role they could or should play, but they definitely should have a seat at the table and have input and offer their perspective and come together as a group of business people and government officials and anybody else who's interested or may have an idea. So I think, yeah, they can and should play a role. To what extent, the devil is in the details. And I don't have any specific proposal, but I would hope that they would work as partners in trying to find a solution to this issue in Newport.
And down to Sam.
So I think that the state does have an obligation in this. I think that the executor or the receiver in terms of the downtown of Newport needs to get as much money for that property as he can. But I think that there needs to be planning involved with the community and BDA, the Agency of Commerce, in order to bring all of the things to bear. There's certainly going to be traffic stuff that the Agency of Transportation will be in there too. But I mean, I think it really, since it's not really our area, but I think it really, should reflect what the community of Newport wants for that area. But it also is going to be the, the receiver and them getting the most that they can for the investors that lost their money.
The legislature definitely was shocked when we were informed of what was happening through EB5 up in Jay Peak, and quite saddened. There's been many discussions happening and legislators looking into it, but I'm cautious about how much power the legislature should have. I think this does need to be wrangled out at a more local level, but we do need to have some accountability for what is happening and has happened. So as we move forward, I'm cautious about how much power the legislature should have, but I think we have been having those conversations, and I think Newport needs the support of the rest of the state to keep moving forward as far as economic growth. So it was a blow. It was a big blow to our area. Some of us were skeptical to begin with EB5 and wondering, is this all really going to happen? Is it going to play out? So I see that on the horizon we've got a lot more things to deal with. I'm grateful that our Walmart's almost up and going, and I think there will be economic growth in the Northeast Kingdom. But what happened in Jay Peak was certainly a real knockdown for all of us here.
And it's going to go back to Sam for the next question. Vermont has a line on its tax forms for sales and use tax for purchases that are out of the state. Some states require a number on that line. Why doesn't Vermont require a dollar amount for sales and use tax? Would that recoup some of the funds that are lost by online sales?
Yes, we do have a line on our tax form. I think the problem with sales tax reporting is compliance. I think they figure that it's about 2% of, what is reported. There is a thing where there is kind of an estimator, which is a minimum, but at the same time, we shouldn't require that people file some. I mean, I actually know plenty of people that never leave the state of Vermont and do all of their purchasing in state. So it's not, people should be paying, the tax that they're obligated to pay, but at the same time, it's not a matter of requirement. I mean, really, the issue, the elephant in the room in this one is Amazon, and they do everything in their power for preventing at the federal level from states collecting the sales tax that is due to the state.
And Vicki?
As I've been talking with businesses over the last 6 years, I've seen that, I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle on this, and that is the sales and use tax in general is way too complicated. And many of our local businesses are being audited by our tax department for simple things like a cup of coffee that they weren't charging the sales and use tax on. And then suddenly the tax department has decided that for the last so many years, they have to pay those taxes. And so the Evansville Trading Post, a bed and breakfast in Glover, there's others that have been having a lot of problems with our whole tax code, the sales and use tax especially. And I find that our tax department in Montpelier has become increasingly oppressive to businesses. I'm not sure if it's statewide, but in the Northeast Kingdom, we're seeing a lot of businesses being audited, and then a lot of fines, and some of them outrageous fines, hundreds of thousands of dollars to small, struggling businesses. And so I've advocated for these different businesses, gone to meetings with them, tried to give them support to hang in there through the process. But in general, our tax system needs to be redone and become simplified, not only for businesses, but for just those of us day in, day out who are paying these taxes.
And Frank?
Can you read your question again, help me understand?
Yes. So Vermont has a line on its tax forms for sales and use tax for purchases that are out of the state of Vermont. Some states require a number or an amount on that line. Why doesn't Vermont require a dollar amount for sales and use tax that was bought outside of the state? That would help, or would that help recoup funds that are lost by online sales?
Well, I'm still a little bit confused about that, but I don't trust the tax department to get this right. I just have lost complete faith that the tax department will not use any common sense, and I think that people will just continue to find loopholes. So I think the best approach would be to just look at the tax code and work a solution into a complete rewrite. And I think that would be the best approach. I just don't see trying to get them to figure out another solution to trying to tax bought outside the Vermont.
Before we get to the next question will start with Vicki, by the way. Before we do that, since we started about 10, 15 minutes later, are you all okay with going till about 7:15? Is that fine with the crowd? I know it's a school night and a work night, so we don't want to keep everybody here too late, but we're going to try to get as many of the questions in as possible. So thank you. The next question, we've managed to pretty much steer away from national politics. However, it definitely is an election season. If you hadn't noticed, there's a presidential race going on. And the question that is up next is, do you support your respective party's nominee for president?
Wholeheartedly want to vote for Pence. This is a tough election year, isn't it? The issues that we're dealing with as a country at times feel overwhelming. But let me just say this about democracy. It is messy. And maybe it's going to be a messy year, but you know what? We're having people out there in the ring, throwing their hat in the ring, and I'm not worried about it. And I'm not offended. I think both parties are going at it, and we might not like it, and sometimes we're somewhat disgruntled. But I must say that it's part of the process. And we all have the option to turn off our TV, but we do have the responsibility, the civic responsibility to be informed. And so whoever we all vote for, we need to know why and what the issues are and what we think is the best candidate. I'm just going to say I'm going to vote for Pence.
Goes to Frank.
Trump is not my first choice. I find him as objectionable as the next person. I find it even more objectionable to have Hillary Clinton in the White House, so I'll vote for Trump.
And Sam?
I am supporting my party's nominee for president. I watched the debate last night. I think that, regardless of her faults, I cannot imagine a Trump presidency, and it really, I actually think that you need skills for the job, and that he does not have. I seriously worry if he's the president that we would actually have a military coup because the generals would feel compelled to take over from him. Like, this man scares me like you wouldn't believe. And I would never, not in a million years, vote for him. Not to mention the sexual assault stuff. I don't even, that's what I think of.
And we're going to bring the mic back down to Frank for the next question. What steps could government take to benefit agricultural, let me do that word again. What steps could government take to benefit agriculture and forestry, which are both important Northeast Kingdom industries?
Regulate less. Make loggers, anybody who's interested in the forest or the future of our forest, a partner, and farmers. The agriculture should make farmers partners. It doesn't happen. I can tell you from experience. I spent the last 5 years advocating as a small farmer for raw milk specifically, but for all small farmers, and I have butted heads with almost everybody at the agriculture department and tried very hard to build alliances, and it seems like every turn they want to find an acrimonious relationship. So that's been my experience.
All right. And to Sam.
Well, a program that we implemented a few years ago, the Working Lands Enterprise Fund, I think is a good way in which to find the farming businesses that have potential for value added, and to provide small grants for them to build their businesses and be able to hire people in the area. We also passed a bill last year that was actually pretty important. Not all foresters are good foresters. We have a couple of notorious foresters around here that go onto people's property, say they're going to do one thing, clear cut the whole place, leave the whole place trashed. And so there was an important provision in there around timber theft. and making it so that there's an actual way to prosecute these people that, you know, engage in this behavior that aren't, you know, respecting the land. Now, I mean, that's few and far between, but you have to have penalties for people that are running around stealing people's timber.
And
Since I've been in the legislature, we've seen more bills coming out to regulate farmers and foresters to the point where we're losing them. Our farms are the small farm, the family farms disappearing. Foresters are finding it harder and harder to stay in business and have the costs. Many of them given fines. The water quality bill is one bill we passed that I did not vote for. Water quality is a great goal. We need good water quality in Vermont. But what I saw in that bill was where farmers can and can't do this or that, their manure piles, how many animals, where their buildings are, their fencing. And I come from a family of Strongs that have had 4 generations of dairy farm, and they want their farm to survive, and they want good quality milk and good farming skills. I think we have to go more toward education and less toward heavy-handed regulation. Let's get our education through Vermont, the UVM Extension Service and our Farm Bureau. And sometimes that's a slower way to go about it, but in the end, we're keeping farmers going through education and less regulation.
And go back to Sam for the next question.
Do you think Vermont's gun laws are fine as they are? Or do you support expanding them, as in requiring universal background checks, including for sales between family members?
You know, I support Vermont's gun laws the way they are. I certainly know a good number of people that have, you know, a large collection of weapons that, you know, were they to need to sell them, they, you know, it would be, you know, cumbersome to have to go down to couriers every time you needed to get a background check to make a single sale. I think that the issue will certainly come up depending on who the next governor is. And if Sue Minter is the next governor, then, you know, that is going to be pushed hard. I think that a compromised position on that would make a lot of sense would be that if people had endorsements of background checks on their license, that then be able to do private sales that way. And just back on the water quality thing for 1 second, was that in the water quality bill, there was funding for people for the Department of Agriculture to go around and work with farmers to access $40 million in federal money in order so that we could use that federal money to clean up the waters. And it's not as an extreme an issue for us around here, but entire Franklin County and Lake Champlain, which is like one of the biggest components of Vermont's economy, is drowning in blue-green algae, and it's toxic, and we did have to do something about the water quality of the state of Vermont, or the federal government was going to come in and do it for us, and we did not want that.
And Vicki?
Could I say one more thing about the water quality? Basically, is why can't we take care of the water quality issues where they are and not regulate the whole state? The one-size-fits-all regulation that we see coming through Montpelier. Anyway, that's my little comment. So I'm totally supportive of the Second Amendment right of all Americans that we've been given since the beginning of our country. It works here in Vermont. The laws we have are fine. I think there's a lot of misconception about guns and how they're bought. My son just bought a while ago a particular piece of firearm and through the internet, and that sale had to go to the local gun shop where a background check was done on him. It doesn't go directly to him and through the mail. We have great laws intact, and we have to enforce those laws. And as we move forward, if we are go into the whole idea of universal background checks, we're going to see our rights as Americans threatened. And what we've known, because we're safe. We're safe because we have guns, and different people have guns. And some of the most heinous crimes that have happened in our country happened in gun-free zones. So this is something I take seriously. And I am completely 100% committed to the rights of us as Americans with owning guns.
And Frank?
I support the Second Amendment. I don't support universal background checks. And I would actually seek to repeal some of the initiatives that were passed in the last legislative session. It was my understanding, Sam, that you supported some of the initiatives of the last legislative session. So it just seems contrary to your statement here. Maybe you can clear that up for us.
Happy. But we'll do it, I'll do it with my time on the next question. We're not really asking each other questions.
If you want to do 30 seconds, that would be good, and because we'll probably have time for maybe one more question with closing statements. So if you'd like to.
Yeah, we had a bill last biennium that, for one, Vermont became the last state in the nation to make it if you had a felony, mirroring the federal law, if you had a felony that you couldn't purchase a firearm, and that was meant for or own a firearm, which is the existing federal law. And the second part of it is for was for people that are severely mentally ill, and they would be reported to the background check database. So that includes people that are not guilty by reason of insanity, considered incompetent to stand trial, or had been involuntarily committed. And I had a brother who was schizophrenic and was able to go and purchase a gun. And my parents had gone to every gun shop in the area and told them that, do not sell our son a gun, and he went and was able to do it anyway. And so that, to me, was an important step in actually making Vermont safer. And it wasn't that he needed to use the gun on himself, which he did, but he did. He was a paranoid schizophrenic, and he could have used it on anybody. So that's why I voted for that law.
We'll start the next question with Bacon. And we're going to try to get hopefully 2 more questions in with closing statements. If we don't get to all the questions, I do apologize just with the time, but the candidates will be hanging around, and I'm sure I'm speaking for them, but I'm sure they won't mind if you ask them questions individually. Am I correct in that? All right. Let's Grow Kids recently released a report showing that 93% of infants and toddlers in Orleans County do not have access to high-quality early care and education. What would you do to expand access to high-quality infant and toddler care in our community?
Yes, thank you for that question, and thank you for those who are here from Let's Grow Kids. They have been tireless in their efforts. I've attended many of their meetings. They have luncheons at the State House that I've been to, I think every one. So they're really helping legislators learn about some of these statistics. I'm a strong proponent of the family and helping families and children. I tried to propose to the legislature also to increase funding to our parent-child centers that we have in each county throughout the state, that as long as the family's strong, then we'll have a strong community and a strong environment in general. And as far as what we can do to help them in the legislature is really focus on the priorities of our funding as we go into the next session, to have that be a priority, but also to see that in order to keep child cares of different kinds and early childhood education programs going, we need to slow down on the regulation, and we just need to let it grow, almost like an entrepreneurship, as we see in other areas of the state, to let these facilities open as needed and per town on local level, so that we can get the best possibilities and opportunities for our young children who need education, obviously, to balance everything that we're dealing with in our culture. So I want to support that, and I appreciate the hard work of those who are doing that.
Frank's.
I would seek to find out what those barriers are in folks trying to access good education or good childcare, and I'm not aware of what they are. We didn't have any challenges in finding access, but I mean, that's key to find out what the barriers are and remove them.
And Sam?
Well, actually, in last year's budget, we did do a little bit of an increase for the parent-child centers. You know, I certainly would be willing to, I mean, now that we have the work of Let's Grow Kids and identifying the areas in which there isn't very much childcare, I think it would maybe be important through, you know, I think Community Capital of Vermont, but also to, you know, to kick in some state funding for, you know, the creation where there's real need. You know, one thing that, you know, does kind of differentiate me from my colleague, who, you know, I really respect, and we work together on a lot of things. But, you know, I support the budget. And when you vote for the budget, you fund all of the things of state government. And that is a really important part of what we do as legislators. The governor, you know, puts forth a budget, and then we as legislators, you know, we can decide that we don't want to spend the money on that, or not that, but we go through this negotiation process and we get the money for the things that are priorities. And I believe that childcare is a priority, and it's something that we need.
And we'll start the last question with Frank. And then we'll go into closing statements. So for the last question, excuse me, how can Northeast Kingdom legislators and those from other rural areas of the state represent their interest in the face of much bigger areas in the state? So in other words, how do you make your voice heard for areas that have more representation numerically?
Just need a strong, passionate voice, somebody that is willing to work every day to advocate for the citizens of this district. That means encouraging people to take part in democracy. If we show up at the State House with 1,000 people from this district, people from Chittenden County are going to start taking attention to what we're saying. And that needs to happen. We can't be leaders without folks who want to point us in a certain direction. And people need to show up and become engaged in what's going on, and find somebody that is willing to speak out for them and speak out every day strongly and bring their issues to the forefront of the conversation constantly with perseverance and determination, and never give up, talking about the issue, working on the issue, and bringing it to the attention of folks who are in authority.
And Sam?
So being in the legislature is a collaborative process. You're working with, you know, colleagues from around the state, and you know, it's, you know, Chittenden County certainly has the numbers, but you know, we're smarter, we're wilier. You know, we know how to go where they don't. Honestly, they're a little complacent. But the way you get anything done in that building is with respect from your colleagues. Committee has 11 people, you need 6 votes. The House has 150 people, you need 76 votes. The only way that you get to that point is by getting enough people together that can agree with your opinion, and you can get there. You know, They have a numerical advantage, but it has to be, you have to make it in their best interest, make it align with ours.
I think it's been a privilege to serve with the Northeast Kingdom legislators that we have serving. They are a strong voice, and sometimes we are drowned out by Chittenden County and Southern Vermont, but they sure do a lot of hard work in the budget committees. We write letters. When 911 dispatch was being threatened here, there was a good, strong, loud voice in that legislature. We've been kicking and screaming about industrial wind, and I think we're turning the tide, and I think it's the efforts of not just the legislators, but the folks who've been coming in to Montpelier that's helped us as well. So I'm hoping for more balance as we go down to legislature again, Lord willing, if I'm re-elected, we'll have more balance, and that will add to our voice, and we'll make some changes. We do seem to feel like we get the short end of the stick a lot of times in the Northeast Kingdom, but we do have great representatives who are trying hard and work hard on all of our constituents' behalves.
All right, and actually we'll bring the microphone down to Sam for closing statements. Thank you, Vicki, for being the microphone passer. I didn't really realize that sitting in the middle was going to be
Not a problem.
so we're going to do closing statements, and we'll do thank yous afterwards. And don't forget, on your way out, there's plenty of refreshments, so take them with them. Take them with you. Take them with them. Why not? It's a free dessert. So 3 minutes each for closing statements, and we'll start with Sam, and we'll go right down the line.
Well, thank you, Todd, and thank you for the Chronicle and the Caledonia Record and everybody for putting this on Newport Daily as well, I guess. I'm seeking to be your state representative. A legislator is not an executive. We work in a body of 150 and with 30 senators. And that means getting 76 House members to vote and 16 senators to agree with you. It's based on your relationships that you've built over time. It's based on your ability to get on the conference committee, which is based on your seniority. It's based on your relationship with the speaker, and I have a good relationship with all of the candidates. I've invested 6 years in becoming the absolute best legislator I can be for this community, and they've entrusted me with that responsibility. I worked on the Commerce and Economic Development Committee, and I moved to the Ways and Means Committee, and I actually have a good shot of becoming the vice chair of that committee in the next biennium. Being on a money committee is where the rubber meets the road, and policies are funded or they aren't. Not sending me back to Montpelier means giving up the thousands of hours I have spent getting to know the policy, the rules, and my colleagues, and starting over. I also work with my constituents individually and solve their problems on a one-on-one basis, either with a change in the law or with the bureaucracy. I feel that I represent you with both diligence and careful consideration of every issue, and I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
I want to thank this forum again for giving us this opportunity to express who we are and what we stand for. I want to say again that democracy is messy, but it's a blessing to be here and to share our concerns and our opinions freely without fear. And that's something I take seriously and don't take for granted. We're in trouble in Vermont. We have an affordability problem. It's a crisis for many people. And that's why I haven't been able, in a good conscience, to vote for our budget for the last 6 years when it's brought upon the floor. I wish I could say, yeah, I want this piece here, and I want that piece there, and I want to make sure the Northeast Kingdom gets that money and that funding. But it's kind of like all or nothing. And so when the rubber hits the road, when a budget's rising at 5%, and our incomes and economy is rising at 1%, it's unsustainable to vote in a good conscience for that. I hope that we can go back, I hope I can go back with your support and find a budget that is votable, that I can vote for in this next biennium. I've seen down in Montpelier that we're losing our freedoms and our our liberties, little by little. One example of that is the philosophical exemption for immunizations that was taken away. That's something that I felt very passionate about, that was wrong, and that families need to have that option. They don't want their child to be inoculated at a certain time or a certain way. The cost of doing business is becoming more unaffordable and too high. Regulation, again, we're seeing that these issues are having a price for Vermonters. We're seeing older people leave the state to go retire in other states. We're seeing young people either leave from college here in Vermont or not even stay in Vermont to go to college. We want that generation to feel that this is their home. We want them to stay here. So we have tough choices to tackle, everything from the cost of living to education. And I want to stay part of that. Part of the privilege of serving in Montpelier is that it's not about me, it's about you, my constituents, the 7 towns I represent. And I find that that's a privilege, that you want to trust me to go and be your voice. And with all my heart, I do it with faithfulness and consistency and hard work. And I hope for your support to help grow our families, excuse me, and help grow our businesses in the next 2 years. Thank you.
Government is out of control. Government spends money faster than you and I can earn it. Somebody's going to need to make some hard decisions, and I can make those hard decisions. I make them as a small business owner, I make them as a farmer, I make them as a father, as part of the family. If we don't do something soon about spending, we're all in some serious trouble. And Phil Scott, as I said in the beginning, will need some help building sustainable budgets. Sam Young has proven by experience that he is not that person. He has supported over $177 million in spending in the last 6 years. If we stay on the same track in 6 years, we're going to be bankrupt. I'll share an experience I've had. I've worked through the legislature for the last 5 years. Some people approach me jokingly and say, are you a registered lobbyist, Frank? But when I became a raw goat milk farmer, I needed to advocate for myself because nobody else was going to do it. I've been advocating in the legislature and the Senate Act longer than Bobby has been appointed its chair. I got a bill introduced, and you can now sell raw milk at farmers markets with lots of regulation, let me tell you, but it happened. And it was the only way I'm able to stay in farming. So I built coalitions and partners in the legislature. We got that bill passed. But we needed to go further. I understood how this process works in incremental steps. So we got another bill passed, a more comprehensive bill. We ended up getting 50 legislators out of 150 legislators. A third of the legislature signed on to that bill. Sam did not. And while that bill was brought up for discussion, it didn't pass because of some strong lobbying from large farms and processors. Otherwise, it wasn't a great bill, but we were making it better. So what we ended up doing is having to make some changes in the agriculture miscellaneous bill, which is another step. So I understand how this process works, and I was determined. As a volunteer, I couldn't afford to spend as much time as I spent in the legislature, but I did it because nobody else was doing it for me. You will find nobody else in this district that will work harder on your behalf than I will. I'm passionate, I'm determined, I'm one of the hardest working people you'll ever meet, and I hope you'll vote for me.
All right, well that will conclude our candidates forum for today. I want to thank the sponsors, I want to thank the media for being here, of course the public for being here as well, and have to thank the candidates also. Don't forget to get out and vote. I don't need to tell you the date, it's November 8th, obviously. If you would like anybody to see this forum that wasn't able to make it tonight, it is going to air on channel 15 on NEK-TV, which is on Comcast. I'm also from this district, so I know that a lot of you don't have Comcast because you can't get it. So I will put it on our YouTube channel as well. At some point this week, you'll be able to search it right on Google. It'll be right on there. Just search for NEK-TV. And don't forget to take some food with you when you go. Childcare.